They never told you that success would feel like a coffin with velvet lining, that the applause would echo like screams inside an empty cathedral, that the trophy would shine brightest when held against the darkness you dragged it through. You chase it anyway, every damn day, clawing toward it like it owes you salvation. But deep down, in the silence between your heartbeat and your breath, you already know. Success isn't the cure, it's the mask. The polished shell wrapped around the same shattered core. And yet, you run. You run because slowing down would mean hearing the truth. You run because the pain taught you motion. You run because somewhere along the line, you made a silent deal with your demons. If I suffer long enough, hard enough, maybe one day it'll all make sense. But here's the thing they don't put on billboards. Pain doesn't make sense. Trauma doesn't come with closure. It just waits, patiently, watching you climb higher, build bigger, smile wider, all while it sharpens the blade behind your back. And when you finally get there, when the crowd chants your name and your name becomes something people worship, it whispers in your ear like an old friend. So, was it worth it? The truth is, most people don't want success. They want proof. Proof that their suffering mattered, that the nights they cried into a pillow, the years they walked invisible, the chaos they buried in silence, it wasn't for nothing. So they build, they hustle, they grind, they sculpt themselves into monuments of control. But what they're really doing is bargaining with the past, praying that if they become enough, they'll outrun the emptiness, that maybe, just maybe, they'll earn a moment of peace. But peace doesn't come at the top. It's too quiet there. And in the quiet, the shadows return. Because trauma doesn't vanish when you win. It camouflages, it wraps itself in your ambition, your discipline, your work ethic. It becomes the force behind your productivity, the fuel for your obsession, the hidden architect of your empire. You think you're driven, but driven by what? If you peeled back your resume, would you find pain beneath the bullet points? If you stripped away your achievements, would you still recognize the face staring back at you? We don't want to ask those questions, not in a culture that worships results, not in a system that rewards the wound only when it's dressed in gold. But what happens when the gold fades? What happens when the high of winning no longer numbs the low of remembering? Because that's what nobody tells you about trauma. It doesn't just hurt, it haunts. And it doesn't knock politely. It arrives like a flood. One trigger, one scent, one song, and suddenly you're 10 years old again, hiding in your room, praying for someone to hear what you were too afraid to say. And now you wear a suit. You shake hands, you sign contracts, you speak on stages. But inside, the child is still screaming. You silenced it with success. But silence isn't healing. Silence is delay. And every day you delay, the pressure builds. Because success doesn't erase the wound, it disguises it. And the more impressive the disguise, the harder it becomes to admit the truth. That you're not okay. That you haven't been okay for a long time. That maybe the reason you can't rest, can't stop, can't breathe, is because every breath is borrowed from a version of you that never had the chance to exhale. They told you to be strong, to get over it, to channel it into something productive. But what they meant was, bury it deep enough that even you forget where you put it. Until one day, you don't. Until one day, you realize the castle you built was never for you. It was a shrine to your suffering, a way to convince yourself that the pain was worth something. But what if it never had to be? What if worth wasn't something you earned through suffering? What if success was never the trophy, but the trauma itself, wrapped in achievement, polished with performance, and placed on a pedestal for others to envy? They call you disciplined, focused, elite. But they don't see the nights you lie awake wondering why the victories feel empty, why the applause feels distant, why, even now, surrounded by everything you once begged for, you feel hollow. Because you didn't climb for the view. You climbed to escape. And the higher you go, the farther you get from the truth. But the truth doesn't fade. It waits. And eventually, it finds you. Even in the boardroom, even in the spotlight, even in the smile you force at family dinners. It finds you, not to punish you, but to ask a question you've been avoiding your whole life. Do you remember why you started running? The answer isn't easy, because it was never about winning. It was about surviving. You didn't chase success for joy. You chased it for oxygen, for the chance to breathe above the waterline of your past. But no one told you that trophies don't float. They sink. And when they pull you under, all the noise goes quiet. All that's left is you, and the question you've spent a lifetime trying not to answer. If I'm not what I achieve, then who am I? That question, it doesn't scream. It whispers, slowly, like water leaking through the cracks of a dam you swore would hold forever. Who are you without the titles, the praise, the pain-polished mask? Who are you without the trauma that taught you how to survive? The truth is, you don't know, because your identity has been forged in fire for so long, you can't imagine a life without burning. You've mistaken pain for personality, hustle for healing, discipline for dignity. But what if the person you've become isn't who you are, but who you had to be? What if your strength is just the scar tissue of everything you were too scared to feel? Think about it. What happens when a child cries and no one comes? They stop crying, not because they're okay, but because they've learned their pain doesn't matter. That's where this started, isn't it? The silence. The moment you realized the world wasn't going to save you. So you saved yourself. You got stronger, sharper, louder. You built walls so high even you couldn't see over them. And the world applauded, called you resilient, a success story, a survivor. But survival has a cost. And you've been paying it with pieces of your soul. You see, every version of success you've built has been a monument to the person you were trying to protect. The kid, the ghost, the echo of a scream that never got answered. That's why it still hurts, even now. Because trauma doesn't want a trophy. It wants a witness. And no matter how many followers you gain, how many awards you win, how many zeros sit in your bank account, that child inside you doesn't care about any of it. They just want to be seen, heard, held. But you're too busy performing, executing, perfecting. You've made success your sanctuary because healing felt too vulnerable. You'd rather be admired than understood, because to be understood would mean showing the cracks. The guilt, the rage, the grief you buried so deep it became the root system of your ambition. But no empire can stand forever when its foundation is avoidance. Eventually, it crumbles. And maybe that's the real fear. Not that you'll fail, but that you'll succeed and still feel like a fraud. Still feel unworthy. Still feel empty. Because you never wanted the trophy. You wanted time. Time to rest. Time to grieve. Time to become something more than a machine built to outrun memory. But time doesn't wait for survivors. It keeps moving, and you keep chasing. Chasing the next milestone, the next project, the next high. Until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the reflection. Not because you've changed, but because you've never actually looked. So let's look now. Let's go there. Not with judgment, but with presence. Can you admit that the love you seek, you've never given to yourself? Can you sit in the silence without needing to prove your worth? Can you accept that healing might mean becoming someone softer, slower, more human than the version of yourself the world fell in love with? It's terrifying, I know. Because we live in a world that rewards performance, not presence. But success built on pain will always require more pain to sustain it. It's a hunger that never ends. A thirst that drinks from your spirit. But you don't have to keep feeding it. You can stop, not give up, not collapse. Just stop and listen beneath the goals, beneath the armor, beneath the silence. There's a voice, small, trembling, but still alive. It says, "I'm tired. I want to come home." And maybe that's what true success is. Not the trophy, not the applause, not the escape, but the return to the self, to the breath, to the wound, not as something to fix, but something to finally feel. Because what you survived deserves more than performance. It deserves peace. It deserves to be witnessed, not commodified. And that starts with you. Can you honor your pain without becoming it? Can you stop running, not because you're weak, but because you finally feel safe enough to stand still? Because safety is the soil where healing grows. And healing isn't loud. It's not impressive. It doesn't trend. But it's real. And in that reality, you may find something you've never felt in all your years of building. Enoughness. Not because of what you've done, but because you're still here. Breathing. Feeling. Facing the shadows with your eyes open. And if that's not success, then nothing is. If this hit something you weren't ready to face, good. Maybe it's time you stopped polishing the trophy and started listening to the pain behind it. Welcome to Philospiral.